Welcome back to another exciting episode of Iron Therapy. I'm Dave Palumbo, and I'm joined, as always, by our staff registered psychotherapist, Lesley Timbol. Welcome back, Lesley. Hope you're having a great Monday.
I am. Thanks, Dave.
I got, as you know, I told you earlier, I got my new cast on, so I have my blue cast on. So I went from green, species green cast, to I was going to go to red, white, and blue for just in time for 4th of July, but evidently the white cast doesn't stay white; it gets yellow, and so I didn't want to do that. So I went with just blue. That's about as patriotic as I can get, you know. Anyway. Today's topic is something that I really think is kind of important to talk about, because in the world of bodybuilding, I find that a lot of people don't get the results that they want and don't ultimately achieve the level of success and muscular development that they want in bodybuilding because they're distracted. When I was coming up myself, I was like a machine, and I saw so many of my friends who were so also into bodybuilding as much as I were, who had 1,000,001 excuses. Distractions. They had to go out with friends on the weekend. They missed meals. They missed workouts. They had to go on vacation. It's just like they just had a lot of, and some people's excuses were legitimate. Some of them had kids, they had families, they had obligations. And I was just a real selfish bastard when I was a bodybuilder. Nothing would distract me, from what my goals were. And which is probably why, I achieved, such a level of muscularity in such a good short period of time, because of the fact that I maximized my time that I put into it. But not everyone has that luxury of living that selfish lifestyle where they don't have to go to a real job. They don't have to, some of them have families and wives and kids. So we took a poll on the RX Muscle Instagram, and we actually asked people, what some of the distractions were. We'll go to that in a minute, but in general, when people come to you with a complaint like, I have these amazing goals, but I just can't do it because I'm distracted. What do you tell them? How should they handle this?
Well, the first thing I do, Dave, is, depending on the person, because sometimes there's distractions that you can't do a whole lot about. Like you were saying, if you have a family, it's much harder we're focused on the bodybuilding piece. Sometimes it's hard to get all your meals in. You've got work involved. There's people who work really long hours, and to be able to eat on a regular basis, and sometimes they don't get breaks throughout the day, that's hard to be able to get your goals in. So what I tell people is sometimes we have to modify it. So things aren't going to be perfect. Given the circumstances, if there's certain circumstances you can change, but the ones that, let's say you're working long hours, you've got a family, you've got those responsibilities, that's not going to change. But what we can change is your expectation of your goals, to saying, okay, if you want to work on whether it's leaning down, whether it's putting muscle on, whether you're in a show or not, let's just call them fitness goals. If they're fitness, it's to be able to say, how can we incorporate this in your life? Now, if you're a bodybuilder, you've got a job. A lot of people still work. Bodybuilding isn't their job per se, some people, but let's say, you're one of those bodybuilders that have a job outside of bodybuilding, plus you have a family. That complicates things, and that might actually affect the shows that you do. So it might be, from a cost perspective, you might do more regional shows because that would be a bit more affordable, because the price point is another piece. But, so I work with people depending on what their goals are, and we have to manage those expectations given the factors they cannot change. If there are factors they can change, that's where I come in and say, okay, what are the pieces that you can change? What are the reasons why you haven't been able to change them yet? Because sometimes there's fears, there's insecurities, and we really need to dive deep into those insecurities to be able to extract those and give them an action plan on how to overcome those fears.
And I can only relate this to myself, because that's the only experience I have with myself. But I felt like, if I had a plan, in other words, if I knew what the most efficient way to put muscle on, which would be to eat a certain amount of food, a certain type of food, to take a certain amount of PEDs, in a certain dosage, I felt in my mind that failure was not an option, that I had to find a way to do exactly what I needed, no matter what. And even if maybe I'm, once again, I'm sure I pissed off family members by missing events. I'm sure people perceived, some of the actions that I had over the years as being selfish, because sometimes people can't understand when someone is so driven to accomplish something, what it takes. And I think a lot of other bodybuilders can relate to what I'm saying right now. But failure was not an option. There was no compromise to be made. Now, having said that, if I only had so much money, I wasn't going to go out and start eating. Like when people would go out on the weekends and they go eat at these fancy restaurants, I wasn't going to blow $100, $75 on a meal for me and my girl at the time, when I could spend $15 on getting a lot more food from the supermarket, stay home and watch a movie so that I have more money to be able to buy everything that I needed. And so I think a lot of people are not willing to compromise to accomplish their goals. And then how do you advise someone like that? Because some people think, well, I can't miss this. All my friends are going to this thing. I got to go. But I mean, at the end of the day, what's the most important thing? Is it hanging out with your friends for the weekend, or is it ultimately your goals to be the greatest bodybuilder that you can be?
How important is the goal? Like for you, it was the failure's not an option. I'm just going to do it. There's no question.
But people say the same thing. Everyone says that failure is not an option, but yet they're not willing to go to the place where failure is not an option.
You have to make tough choices. And the question is, if you're not, there's one thing to say something and there's another to actually put it into action. Mm-hmm. So if you're having a hard time putting into action, it's looking at the why. And is your why for competing? If we're focusing on bodybuilding, and I'm not just talking about fitness goals, I mean, actually getting on stage. If your goal is to, place a certain way or win an overall or whatever, pro card, whatever that goal might be, if you're really willing to do what it takes in a healthy way, you have to make different choices. So that might mean if you can't afford fish, you might have to do chicken, or you might,
or tuna in a packet, right?
Or tuna in a can. I mean, I get my tuna from Costco.
I was doing salmon in the chicken of the sea packets, the wild caught salmon. It's $3, it's like, it's a lot cheaper than going and buying, $20 a pound for wild caught salmon, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Salmon. I love salmon. On the Costco, salmon is really good, but it's expensive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of a treat. So, I mean, you have to make certain choices. It doesn't have to be perfect, Dave. And that's what sometimes people get caught into. If their coach gives them a plan and they don't follow it to the letter, mm-hmm. So they can't substitute, let's say, instead of chicken, they want to do fish. That's right. Not a big deal.
That's not a big deal now.
But if you want to do chicken and if let's say chicken's on your thing and then you're like, oh, I want lamb. Well, no, that's definitely off the list. Right. So, I mean, you got to be realistic on those expectations, as far as what can move. And let's say you're supposed to eat every 2.5 hours, but it ended up because of your shift at work, you literally could not leave your station, or there was a meeting and it ended up being 3.5 hours. That's not going to make or break your place.
No, but you know what, Lesley, I would say I have to go to the bathroom, and I would go into the bathroom and I would devour the meal or gulp a shakedown. I never missed a meal. There was no meal missing with me because I would actually get, you could talk to my ex at this. I would get literally angry if it was like 15 minutes late, because my body knew that I was hungry and I had to eat, and I felt like I was getting catabolic. That's how nuts I was about not missing anything. And so if you plan properly, okay, even if you're on a business trip someplace, everyone can go to the bath. People go to take cigarette breaks. So I would go to the bathroom, bring my food, and I would be like, and that's it. And I'm done. And now I feel like a sigh of relief. I can go and function and do whatever I have to do. So same thing when I used to sit at these Metrex booths back in the day. It's like 12 hours you're at the booth. And I would take a break if I needed to go to the bathroom, and I would eat my meal or drink a shake, and I'd be back in action again. So there was no missing. And I've told this story before. I would go to Thanksgiving dinner, and as I'm leaving, I'm calling the Chinese restaurant to order my next, meal, because I can't miss. It just wasn't an option. But people get distracted. I have clients that are so gung-ho when they first start, and then after 3 weeks, they're already like off the reservation, and they got 40 different things. They got to go to Disneyland. They got to go here. They got to go here. I said, pack your food.
Yeah.
I went on vacation. You got to just plan, or you plan to fail. You know the old saying.
Yeah. And, for the most part, we can plan ahead of time. It takes work, takes, you know, some organization, but it can be done. There's going to be those one-offs that hit you out of left field that you had no, you know, you can always have a backup, pack up, you know, like a backup protein powder, you know, put it in a bag or a cup, you know, and just add water to it. But I mean, you know, there are going to be those once in a while. And that's what I don't want people to fixate on. You want to try
once in a blue moon,
yeah. I mean, if it's not 100%, okay, again, it's not going to make or break you if it's a one-off, as long as it's a one-off. And you just plan as much as you can.
My friend Doug would take me to the beach, and he was like kind of my mentor, taught me how to train properly. And he had a great physique back in the day too. And I'd be at the beach. We'd be at the beach because he had to go to the beach every day. And I was like kind of looking up to him at the time. And he was like kind of my mentor as far as training and putting muscle on. And I would bring food with me to the beach, and he would eat nothing the whole time he was there. And, you know, and I said, Doug, you got to eat. And he would drink like a shake when we got to the gym or something like that. But he went 4 or 5 hours, you know, without eating anything. We would eat it at his house. And then at the beach, 2 hours into the beach, I would have a meal. He wouldn't have anything. We'd get to the gym, you know, an hour and a half after that. I'd drink a shake. He'd drink a shake. I'm a meal ahead of him now. So, you know, it just wasn't important because he wanted to have flat abs at the beach. I mean, so, you know, it sounds ridiculous, but I'm telling you, it happens all the time. And you know what? So a lot of people get distracted with food. Now, we put a poll up on the RX Muscle Instagram. Let me pull that up, which is, I thought that was interesting, some of the comments we got. And we asked people, you know, what were your biggest distractions? What are your biggest distractions from bodybuilding, your bodybuilding goals? And you can see, if you look at the answers, I see Lee Priest. As soon as I see Lee Priest, I know it's going to be a good answer, you know. He's like social media and phones in the gym, which is nowadays a huge distraction for sure. Jeremy Potvin says, food, I like to eat bad shit way too much. And, you know, that's another thing I hear. A lot of you know, Alone Power says self-sabotage. A lot of people also, they're afraid of success sometimes, and they almost sabotage those. Another person says women. So, I mean, what do you say to people when they come to you and they give these excuses? How do you get past these?
Well, I basically address it. So it's okay. Just pick one, Dave. Just pick one, and I'll go through one at a time.
How about like people who just can't control their food? They're liking to eat junk food, and they eat, instead of having the chicken and the rice, they eat an ice cream cone, and then they miss a meal because of that.
Okay, so I want you, before you pick up the ice cream, I want you to picture yourself on stage, because I'll tell you right now that ice cream is going to show on stage. So it's a question of how badly do you want it? Do you want the ice cream, or do you want to kill it on stage? That's your choice. If you know,
that sounds cute and everything like that, like in theory. And I say the same thing. I say, you know what? When I always thought to myself, if I get up on that stage and get beat by someone who's more conditioned than me because I cheated, shame on me, right? But people can't. There's a lot of people that don't think long term. They think for the very moment they're in, they want instant gratification.
So the thing is that keep in mind, a temptation, whatever that is, we'll call it food. It'll increase. There'll be a crescendo. It goes up. It'll hit a peak, and that's when people cave. But then it will drop. And the idea is if you can ride the wave, so you don't fall into the temptation. And how you ride that wave, Dave, is you distract yourself.
Absolutely, I agree.
So if you can distract yourselves during that moment of temptation. So if I think someone said Mexican food or something, there's some other food in there.
What do you do? What do you do to distract yourself when those temptations come? I'll tell you what I used to do.
Well, for distraction, literally what I do for food.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is I'm in prep. So the big thing I'll do is I'll watch food programs. Like I'll eat chunk bakery stuff, like the stuff I'm going to eat after the show, which I don't usually eat half of it.
It's like torture to yourself, but it's like you're watching a porn movie almost, right?
Well, yeah, it's food porn.
Yeah.
You know, it's food porn. So it's a little different, but you know, I have the resolve. But the other thing is I think of, okay, between me and my competitor is going to eat that Mexican food or the ice cream or whatever. I'm not. I'm going to kick ass because my drive to win is higher than my need for the ice cream or whatever the food is. I've learned. Now, this was over time. This has taken me years to get here, Dave. Okay. I've not always been like this. Before it's like, screw this, I'm having that chocolate chip cookie or whatever. I
must have something wrong with me because I never gave into temptation. In other words, and I can't watch the food channels on TV unless I actually have my meal in front of me. So when it's time to eat, I will sit down and watch the food channel because at least I'm putting something, because I could watch a bakery show and I could be eating tuna and rice and it's like just as good as eating the bakery food because I'm so hungry. But as soon as the meal's over, I have to turn the show off. And then my distraction is I'll clean. I'll say, oh, that closet.
You can clean. Watching bodybuilding podcasts. I mean, trying to get yourself motivated or working on a to-do list. I'll change my music that I listen. I know, Lee, if you're watching this, you're not big on music, but I bring my phone, not to talk on the phone. I bring my phone to listen to music because I don't like the gym music.
Yeah.
So I will put on some music, especially like, for certain days, I'll have certain, like leg day, I did leg day. So I have a certain kind of music list for that. But once in a while you get bored of it. So what I'll do is I'll actually look for music. So if I do get a temptation, that's what I'll do. I'll listen for more tunes and like download some new stuff just to make it a bit more interesting. It's learning how to distract yourself. But yeah, cleaning and laundry, definitely food prep. There's always stuff to do.
What about people who have who get into a relationship? So they're dieting, they look good, they feel good about themselves, they could give a shit about a relationship. That's always when you meet someone, right? Because you're putting out this vibe that I don't care. So you meet this, let's say you're a guy, you meet this amazing girl and she wants you to take her out on dates and you want to show her to the movies and she's eating popcorn and you got to go to restaurants and you just say, you know what, these guys fall so in love that they just wind up giving up the contest prep and they just start eating with the girl and because they're having sex all the time and it just completely blows the whole contest prep. And it goes vice versa. Girls meet a guy, all of a sudden they're like, oh, I don't need to do this show. This guy's more important, I don't. And so they sabotage themselves because of that. How do you stop that from happening?
Well, it's usually, okay, let's say they mess up on a previous prep and that's exactly what happened, is saying, okay, do you want that to happen again at your next prep? Do you want to do the show or do you want to be in a relationship? Mm-hmm. So if this, I'm not talking about an existing relationship. I'm talking about if you're trying to get into a new relationship. Just saying, getting into a new relationship and going into prep at the same time, it's not usually a good idea.
Yeah, but if you're in the middle of prep and you meet someone that seems like the most amazing person, even though they're probably nutcases, but assuming you meet this person, you think they're the most amazing person. Of course, you're willing to sacrifice anything for them, right? Because it's such an amazing feeling, and you're like high on the fact that you're meeting this new girl or this new guy, and it's almost like you're eating like a buffet worth of food. And people just give up everything because of that. And then, of course, they break up 2 weeks later and then they sabotage the whole show because of it. So how do you get people to if someone comes to you and says, look, I met this great girl, but it's so distracting to me. I can't focus on my show. How do you manage both at the same time?
Just saying, okay, if you want to do a show and you want to be in a relationship, you can do both, but it's the timing. So just saying, okay, if the last time you did this, it didn't work out. So the next time you do a show and if you meet someone, say, you know what, let's get together after my show. Right. Table it. Because if you don't have the self-control, having another person's not going to help.
Tabling it, okay? As much as it sounds like in good in theory, no girl's going to say, you know what, yeah, all right, do your show in 8 weeks and then you can come back and we'll start dating or something like that.
And that's, that's okay. But because the thing is that likely that's not going to be your last show, Dave.
Right.
And the thing is she has to get used to, or he, depending on whoever it is, the person, that's not the bodybuilder has to realize that's part of the deal if you're going to be in a relationship with someone who's in bodybuilding. Right. Assuming that's not their last show.
The answer, I think the answer is find someone who's either competes, who's interested in competing, who likes the sport, works out obsessively like you do, because then they can understand what you're going through and they're not going to peer pressure you into taking them to restaurants where they know you shouldn't be eating that food. They're going to be more likely to go to places where you can eat, the right foods, or if you have a cheat meal once a week, you can go to a certain restaurant that you like. And maybe they can defer gratification until after your show. And that to me shows you that person is actually, caring and interested in your goals. And they don't want to sabotage you or have you sabotage yourself, because then you're going to resent them after the show's over, obviously.
I mean, that's what we were talking about with the bodybuilding and relationships too. You have to find the ideal person. If the ideal person, you can be attracted to someone great, but if they don't respect your bodybuilding goals, see you later. You know, it's now some people are in relationships already, and then they're in a relationship and then they start bodybuilding. That's a different story. Sure. Because then that other person is, let's say we'll call them the couch potato. And I'm not saying all people are couch potatoes who aren't bodybuilders, but I'm saying the other people. If they're couch potatoes and you learned, hey, I really like this lifestyle and I want to become a bodybuilder, and they're not supportive. In fact, they sabotage me by having junk food in the house, or they eat that stuff in front of me. Yeah. You have to have some heart talks with them. Right. And if anything, if that's not working, bring them into counseling, because sometimes they need to hear from another person. Mm-hmm. And that's the case, whether they're bodybuilders or other kinds of things. That's why they kind of do there's a saying that if you're going to teach someone how to drive standard, don't have it be your partner, have it be someone totally different. Because we're just a bit more open to people who are not our partners.
If you're going to go to a therapist, they better call you too, because there's no therapist is going to tell the person who's the bodybuilder that they're living a normal, they're going to say you're being unreasonable and flexible. Yeah. We need someone like you who could actually understand, who competes, who knows, hey, you know what, this is part of the lifestyle. Yeah, it's not going to happen all year long, but for 16 weeks, this person might be checked out a little mentally,
and it might be more than 16 weeks if they're doing more than one show. Yeah. And the whole thing is, do they have to be another bodybuilder? Well, another bodybuilder, I think, would understand. Mind you, not all bodybuilders are mentally strong enough to be in a relationship and compete at the same time. But if someone can basically respect the bodybuilding lifestyle, now they might come from a different sport. Let's say they're in martial arts or something, or they're in a different type of work environment that really has a kind of disciplinary lifestyle to it. Mm-hmm. Again, someone who can relate to some degree, but they don't have to be a bodybuilder to be able to make it work. But again, it's honestly, Dave, what it comes down to, whether you're a bodybuilder or not, is respect and communication. That's really, really important in any relationship.
Yeah, I just, throughout my bodybuilding, career, even afterwards when I was covering shows, which is actually more time consuming than actually competing, I only dated people that were in the industry, in the sense that they competed or they understood about competing, because it wouldn't work with a normal person. They just don't get it. And it sounds glamorous at first, traveling all over the place, but you know what? You're not traveling and going sightseeing. You're traveling and going to a bodybuilding show for 12 hours a day or maybe more. So you have, that was something that I always made sure of, that the person I was with understood what I was doing, because I knew it was never going to last. So that's something that you might be, you might want to, I know now, if you meet the girl of your dreams in the supermarket, what are you going to do? But by and far, usually bodybuilders are people who work out and compete, meet other people either at shows, online, or in the gym, because they have the same interests. And I think it's a good thing to have the same interests when you're actually actively competing, because it is a very selfish type of situation. Mm-hmm. And not many normal people would understand that.
Agreed.
What would you say is the number one, before we wrap this up, the number one distraction that bodybuilders or people who work out have, and that might have be things that you see in your practice when you talk to people?
The number one would probably be the comparisons. Whether it's other people working out in the gym, whether it's being on social media, athletes, what they do is they get in their heads and they don't end up focusing. And that's why they get distracted in the gym. So instead of working on their set, they'll initially start the workout focused, but then they start looking around the room. Who's watching me? Who do I know? And I'm not saying you can't do a quick hello, but then it's like, are you really focused on what you're about to do in the next set? How do you zone back in? And I tell people, you're zoning out. Let's get you back in the zone. Right. So how you get back in the zone is you focus on, okay, what's the next exercise you're going to do? What's the muscle you're going to target? Right. Start to feel like what that contraction is going to be before you reach for that bar or that dumbbell, that bar, like whatever the machine is. Sure. I need you to kind of make that muscle mind connection before you touch the bar, before you touch the weight. I need you to kind of be in the moment, and then you try to own that machinery. Like that's yours. Like you're going to dominate that machinery. You're going to kick ass. Then nothing else matters. Everything else is a blur, and you're just really zoned in that moment, and then you hit it hard. So that's the thing about refocusing. It's not the distraction. It's how do you get yourself back in the zone? And the more you practice that, this is a skill, Dave. We all get distracted. Let's be honest. We all get distracted to some degree. We're not going to be 100% focused 24/7. That's not realistic. Mm-hmm. Some people are better at it than others, but it's a skill that you need to practice. So if you're used to being distracted, let's say when you're training in the gym, then I want you to spend at least pick one exercise that you're going to do tomorrow. If you're in the gym tomorrow, the next time you're in the gym. And I want you to be so laser focused with every rep that you do and every set that you do. Time your rest periods. If you have a watch or you're on your phone, time it and be totally in the zone for that one exercise. And then I want you to build on that over time. But it takes work because we're not used to focusing that for that long period of time.
We have a population of ADD people. Lee Priest was right then. Lee said the phone, the social media, that's the biggest distraction. I think he might be right. If I were, when I train, sometimes I'll listen to a podcast. And if I don't, sometimes I go into the gym and I don't listen to anything. I just train. And you know what? I have much better workouts when I don't listen to anything and I don't look at my phone. If I was competing in this day and age, I would shut the phone off while I trained for whatever it is, an hour, straight. Because when I start to look at the phone, I start to worry about taking pictures. I lose focus on the workout because your mind's not there. But when you're only focused on the workout and you're, between sets, you're thinking about what the next set's going to be. You might be posing, you might be stretching, you might be wrapping your knees or whatever. You're in the zone right there, like you said. And I think it's important that people who train nowadays turn that phone off while they're going. Now, if you want to film something that you're doing, let someone else do it. Say, here's my phone, film me while I'm training, and then just don't even pay attention. Worry about your workout, because if you don't focus on that workout, you're not going to extract the most out of it. There's no way Dorian Yates ever would have looked at a phone when if there were phones around and social media when he was training. He might have someone filming him in the gym. Unlikely that too. But even if he was in the zone. And that's the way I used to train. It was almost like a temple. I understood why Joe Gold didn't play music at World Gym in Venice, because it's almost like even the music was a distraction.
It depends on the person though, Dave, because for me, when I don't have music, I'm not as motivated.
Well,
I need to have music
distract you from everything else, because sometimes the music can put you in your own little world and block out reality. A lot of people have trouble blocking out what else is going on in the gym. Like you said, they're too busy looking around at what everyone looks like, So.
And it also puts me in a certain mode. There's certain kind of let's say even movie themes that I will have playing, and it gets me into that rhythm, into that mode. And then I can hit it. Now, when I'm training, I actually don't even listen to the music. I'm in a totally different place. It's more like the prelude of getting me into that zone. And then I zone out the music. I couldn't even tell you what I was listening to, because again, it's just getting me into that zone that helps. But again, for certain people, they don't want the music. And again, it's teach his own, but you have to find out what works for you and just lock in.
I compulsively obsess on whatever's in my visual field or in my audio field. If I was studying or I'm writing some a paper or doing emails and I got things like TV's playing in the background, I'm fixated on the TV. I cannot focus. Whereas my wife, she listens to a podcast or she's watching a TV show and she's banging away. She's not going to work out like it's no tomorrow. She said when she would go to study for school, she would be listening to music. I'm like, how did you focus on what you were doing? Women have a better ability to multitask, I think, than men do. I can focus on one thing at a time. I'm very good at it if I focus on one thing, but if I try to do two things at the same time, I miserably fail at both of them. That's just me. I don't know. Maybe that's men in general. What do you think?
Again, I don't know if it's necessarily a gender thing, but again, it's just finding what works for you. So if you know what distracts you, find things that keep you in the zone. And if you're not sure, I'm going to do a live after this on my YouTube channel, on the Mental Iron YouTube channel. So if you guys want to hop on my YouTube, then we can go live and I can answer your specific questions there.
Sounds perfect. If you guys want to get over there, right after this show is over, you go right over to Lesley's YouTube channel. I want to thank you guys for joining us live today. Distractions, it's a big problem with achieving your bodybuilding goals. If you have any questions or you want to do a session with Lesley, give us your phone number again so people can set up a consult with you.
So it's 416-805-6155, or send me a DM on my Instagram, which is Lesley_T_mental_iron.
All right, that's going to do it for today's program. Les, thanks for joining us. And once again, head over to Lesley's YouTube channel if you want to continue this chat and ask Lesley some live questions. For now, I'm Dave Palumbo with Lesley Timbol. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.